With a 110 rhythm beat bank, multi-accompaniment system, 49 keys, a 220 sound tone bank with tone editor, this is the Casio CT-470.
Hello, Doktor Vells here. Just going to demonstrate the Casio CT-470. This I first had back in 1990. And a very fine piece of equipment it is as well, with 110 rhythms, 220 sounds, rhythm controls, tone editor, memory record, a demo track which is by Paula Abdul, and yeah, very nice piece of equipment indeed. This is not the model that I had back in the 90s. This I bought a couple of years ago off eBay, and it suffered somewhat through its life and maybe suffered in transit as well. It has some screws loose inside. It has a segment missing on the multifunction LED display, so that actually does say 00, but that segment does not work. There are some sliders on the left end of the keyboard which do not have their tops, but apart from that it works fairly well. When the keyboard is switched on, it reverts to its default setting, which is 00 sound, which is the first sound in the tone bank, and 0 beat, which is the first rhythm in the beat bank, which in this case is rock 1. Now at the moment the display is showing 00, which means piano, so if I press the beat bank button, it then shows 0, which means rock 1. So first of all, we'll cover the beat bank. So with the power switch in the on position, that means that when I play something with my left hand, it's just the normal keyboard function. And when I press start stop on the rhythm section, it will just play the drums. And we have break and fill in, an intro and a long intro, we have a coda and an ending. Obviously coda is longer than ending. Now if I go onto fingered chord, we can then start to play with bass lines and things like that. There is also a Casio chord function, which means that you can play chords using a couple of fingers. Never done that. I've always been taught to play chords fully. It's personal preference, I prefer to do that. So we are on rock 1, and now I've switched to the Casio chord function, fingered mode. Chord 1 and chord 2 have lit up. So let's have a listen. Let's do a synchro start. We can synchro start this. Now I can switch chord 1 or chord 2 off, leaving just the bass line if required, and so on. There's also obbligato, Two other functions are auto-harmonise and echo line. I find echo line to be really rubbish, to be quite honest, but auto-harmonise is quite nice. And with many keyboards, if you play a chord and the synchro light is not set, and the rhythm isn't playing, you get a chord based on the sounds for that rhythm anyway. Like so. And if I press auto harmonise and play a note, adds a harmony. That may be easier to hear if I do this. Nice. Echo line, well, I don't know. Let's change to hard rock. No, let's, yeah. Not sure about that. It can produce good results, but I've only ever heard it produce anything decent once. But an interesting feature all the same. Auto harmonise and echo line cannot be on at the same time. It's either one or the other. There are 10 banks, numbered 0 to 9, and each bank has 11 rhythms. So in this case, the rock bank 0 has rhythm 0, which is rock 1, and then it has rhythm 0, 0, which is rock 2, 0, 1, which is rock 3, and so on. And it's all printed on the case here. So I can quickly look at, say, let's look at Pops 2. So Pops 2 section, we can type 2 in there. So without the secondary number we have 16 beat, this is quite nice. That's a long intro. And then pressing the beat bank button we can bring up the secondary number. So we can go to 2 0, which is 8 beat 1, 8 beat 2, 8 beat 3, 8 beat 4, and so on. You can just go through them. Some of them are almost songs in their own right, and it can be quite fun just to spend an hour or 3 just going through all of those and having a laugh with those. But yeah, that's a quick overview of the rhythms. And of course the tempo can be changed. It defaults it to 132, goes as high as 256 beats per minute, and goes as low as 40 beats per minute. Pressing the 2 tempo buttons at the same time causes the tempo to revert to 132 beats per minute. So a very intuitive user interface there. Now we shall look at the sound tone bank, 220 sounds. Yes, the Casio CT-470 has a total of 220 sound settings. Now some of these I think are based on synthesized sounds and some are based on realistic sounds, I suppose. I don't think there is much in the way of sampled sounds given its vintage and price, but some of them are quite reasonable. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from the chord mode back to on, which gives me full keyboard. And we are on sound 00. Now the tone bank is arranged similarly to the beat bank. It's arranged quite cleverly actually. 00 is piano 1, which is the first sound in the piano section. And we have various sections, which I shall run through in a moment. If I press the select button here, it changes 0, 0 to 1, 0, 10, which puts me on the electric piano bank. And then I can go into that and get to sound 10, 0, which is electric piano 2, and electric piano 3, and electric piano 4, and electric piano 5, and electric piano 6, and so on. Press tone back to get back to the bank number, and press select. We end up back at 0, 0 piano. Now, it's no coincidence that electric piano is 10 and piano is 0, 0. They are related in that piano is 0, 0, electric piano is 10, harpsichord is 0, 1, and clavi is 1, 1. Percussion 1 is 2, and percussion 2 is 12. Then we have electric guitar, which is 3, which is related to acoustic guitar, which is 13. And we have woodwind related to brass and string, organ related to electric organ, bass and the split keyboard bank, which splits the keyboard in half, so one sound on the left, one sound on the right. The split point cannot be adjusted, and the sounds in the split cannot be changed. Some split sounds are actually in other banks as well, confusingly, but they can be quite useful. Synth reed is paired with flute, synth sound is paired with sound effect. Some are quite useless, as you would expect, and ensemble 1 is paired with ensemble 2, and they are big sounds. So it's quite intuitive to use, actually. So if I go to one of my sounds that I use quite often, which is 9-1, which is strings 3, it's a reasonable string sound. It's got quite a cut off to it. One thing you'll notice with this keyboard is, as you go up the octaves on certain sounds, the tone of the sound does change. For example, this string sound, that's quite rich. But it changes there. It changes there. And that can be annoying, but it can also introduce a nice effect, I suppose, if used carefully. The piano sound does the same. Yeah, it's just one of those things. But yeah, we can get quite a decent sound out of this. Another feature on this keyboard is the tone editor. Now this, I think, is great. You see that string sound? It sounds a little flat. It's not very full, it's a little empty. But we can detune it, we can add a stereo delay, we can change the attack and decay, and we can change the release. Nice. So if we detune it slightly, add a little delay, and a load of release. Really full sound. Now we have to be careful with this because this keyboard is only 12 note polyphonic. So we can actually run out of notes and it starts to clip, which you do get with a lot of things. And if you're careful with it, you can either mask that or just avoid it completely. But yeah, we can get quite a nice sound out of this. which is quite nice. It's very effective. There is no indication on the display of what the tone editor settings are, and you cannot save any changes you make on the tone editor. As soon as you come away from the sound, that edit has been lost. Also, the tone editor does not work when in MIDI mode. If I just press tone bank, just to go to sound 09, which is another string sound, then I go back to 9-1, the sound has reverted to how it was originally. It's gone back to its factory setting. So all that editing has been lost. So do be careful of that if you use this. That's pretty much an overview of the keyboard. The memory records, I think, something like 312 notes, which isn't a lot, but it is sufficient for simple performances. That memory is retained as long as there is power to the keyboard. It doesn't matter if you switch the keyboard off, that's fine, as long as the batteries are in the bottom or the external power is still connected, which incidentally is 9 volts DC, center negative, outer positive. A few notes on some of the features of this keyboard are: the keyboard does not have touch sensitive keys, which is a shame, but does have a socket for an expression pedal as well as a socket for a sustain pedal. The keyboard does not have a modulation wheel. Also, the keyboard does not have a pitch bend wheel, but it will accept pitch bend commands from an external device via MIDI. The keyboard has MIDI in and MIDI out ports, as well as a 3.5mm headphone socket. So I'm just going to mess around now, and hopefully you'll see some of the potential of this keyboard. Well, I hope you found this video interesting and enjoyable, and I hope one day you will get to try the Casio CT-470 or even the CT-670 for yourself. So until next time, goodbye!